Mojo here. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Cuppa Mojo podcast. I'm fully aware that time is one of the most precious and non-renewable resources that any of us have. And so I don't want you to spend your time here. I want you to invest it. It is my full intention that the time you spend with me will be nourishing to your soul, your heart, your mind. That's my prayer, and I believe that is possible. You know, it's really interesting as a marketing professional, which I've been in marketing for more than 3 decades. The bottom line, as all marketers know, is that the first question on the forefront of most people's minds is, what's in it for me? WIIFM, right? It's kind of the way we go through life, especially when we're scrolling and we're surfing and watching TV. Commercial comes on, and the first thing your brain does, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is ask the question, what's in this, or what's in it for me? And I've found that pattern, right, that question that comes up so regularly can start to erode our understanding of ourself and our relationships with the world around us, because it really becomes egocentric. That means the world revolves around me. You know, the old joke is, and I'm a trumpet player, how many trumpet players does it take to screw in a light bulb? The answer is it just takes one, because the rest of the world revolves around him or her, right? It's a joke, but that's the way we often go through life, just by nature. We are always asking on the subconscious level, what's in this for me? And combine that with our negativity bias, which science says we kind of enter into every situation, especially new situations, with a predisposed bias towards what's going to go wrong and how am I going to get hurt, how to protect myself. So we're in defense mode before we even know if anything is good for us or not. But I'd like to propose in this talk that we change that acronym just slightly. But the changing the acronym changes our perception, which could change both our mindset and our heart set. So rather than WIIFM, I've added a couple letters to that acronym, and now I'm asking myself, and I challenge you as well, to ask, what's in this for me to give? So adding a TG or TL, to learn. What's in it for me to give? What's in it for me to learn? And that actually changes the way I enter into a conversation, a situation, a relationship. Very important, because it takes me from being egocentric to being others-centric, right? I suspend all of my preconceived notions and my need to be right and my need to be heard and my need to be validated. And I'm really entering in as a curious person, as a kid, yet again, where, you know, no wonder that Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like the children. So they're always curious. My kids, when they learn to talk, one of their favorite questions is always why? Why, Daddy, why? And whatever answer I gave them was never enough. It was then why about whatever that answer was, and that could go on forever. And I am glad that is the case with my kids, because that is how all of us learn. And curiosity, questions actually suspend our judgment. It keeps us from that treacherous 2-word English phrase, I know, right, to I want to know more. What else? What else is out there? What else can I learn? How else can I grow? So that switch, WWIFMTG, to grow, to give, or to learn. And I think that leads directly into my talk today, which is about what I call the 2 essential vitamin C's for a living. Now, I'm not a big vitamin fan. I've read enough studies to understand that any trace elements of vitamins that you take, and vitamins actually immediately take me back to my childhood, and I think of the little Flintstones, which is kind of creepy as I look back, because it's kind of a form of cannibalism. I'm eating little people. Anyway, I digress. But I know that vitamins, according to science, your body doesn't really absorb much of those nutrients because it's an unnatural way, and they don't come with all of the other things that are necessary for your body to absorb them. So most of it passes right through your system, and occasionally a little bit of it gets absorbed. But I think there are 2 essential vitamin C's, they don't come in a bottle, that are actually essential to making life purposeful and meaningful and beautiful. And those 2 C's are connections and contributions. Connections and contributions. I think these are the vital elements to a purposeful, meaningful, beautiful life. Connections, with connections, I mean relationships. And I've broken down relationships kind of into categories to help understand how pervasive relationships and connections are in our life, how essential they are. And the categories that have come to mind are, first and foremost, my relationship, my connection to me. If I'm disconnected from myself, then it's very likely I won't be connected to anybody else, at least not very healthily. So my connection to me, my connection to my loved ones, which is my closest circle, right? And then the connection to my community, which might be work, or it might be the place that I live, or both. That's a little bit of bigger a circle. Then my connection to humanity, the human race, which is all of us, right? Part of one giant human race. My connections to people everywhere. Then I take it another step further. My connections to the planet I live on, my connections to the earth, the symbiotic relationship, and how I'm dependent on the trees to give me oxygen, and they're dependent on me to give them carbon dioxide, and all the other connections with our universe. And finally, my connection, and probably the most important and most profound, is my connection with my Creator, God, universe, source, however you describe that. And that one is always there, and yet often goes unnoticed. But this is true of all of our relationships and our connections, that it does take mindful awareness, conscious choice to prioritize both our attention and our time and our energy into relationships, because those are the most valuable things that we have. Every person on their deathbed, if they have any regrets, generally the number one answer is, I wish I had spent more time with the people that I love. That's about relationships, connections, right? And we also know the opposite is true. When we get disconnected from ourself, from our loved ones, from our community, from our human race, our humanity, or from the planet, and especially when we feel disconnected from our source, our Creator, well, things go haywire, right? Then we have all sorts of wellness issues, mental health issues, depression, and suicide even. So connections are key, absolutely essential. It's vitamin C. The other vitamin C that I think is absolutely vital, I call contributions. This is the other C, and this is the exhale, right? Connections is the inhale. It really feeds my soul. I fill up my soul and my senses and my heart and my mind with connections. And then I exhale, which is required, because I've said before, if you inhale and you hold it, you'll pass out. If you exhale and you hold it too long, you'll pass out. Both are required. So inhale the connections and exhale contributions. This is, what do I have to give? Again, what's not what is in it for me, what's in it for me to give? This is the connections piece. And I got to tell you, almost all of the really great teachers that I tune into, people who have lived life for a while and experienced the highs, the lows, the in-between, success, defeat, all of those things, ultimately they come to a very similar conclusion. And I'll just quote Tony Robbins as an example. He says, the secret to living is giving. The secret to living is giving. Contributions, right? What do I have to give? What's in it for me to give? And that can be abused, of course. It's certainly true as well that if we're depleted, if we're empty, then we have nothing to give. So this is why self-love, I believe, is so essential to life, that connection to me, because I must be filled with love, joy, peace, patience, humility, self-control, all of these things, not so that I'm great, but so that I have an overflow, an abundance to give in any situation. And so I'm actually trying to be consciously aware, forcing myself, and I invite you to do this as well, that when I step into a conversation, a situation, a new circumstance, rather than either being afraid because of that negativity bias and trying to protect myself and being defensive, or thinking, what can I get, right? I really try to reframe those situations with, what can I give? What can I contribute? What do I have that can contribute to this conversation, to this relationship, to this situation, etc.? And sometimes what I have to give isn't wanted, it isn't solicited. I have to be very careful. I'm guilty of oversharing, as some of you may have already experienced. When I have a good idea, when I'm feeling good about something, when I have something that I think would be benefits people, I don't always wait for their permission to share it. I just blurt it out there, thinking that they'll be as blessed as I am with whatever idea that I've got. And I'm finding that that's not exactly true. And that requires emotional intelligence on my part to understand that there is a time to listen and there's a time to speak. And in fact, as it's been said, God gave me 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, and I have to remember to use those proportionately, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So contributions is key. But that's not always where you lead. You lead with the inhale, right? Taking in your surroundings, understanding, asking questions, those big why questions. And not just the surface question of why that you get the first answer, which is rarely the truth. I mean the deep truth, the underlying truth. But ask and keep on asking, seek and keep on seeking, knock and keep on knocking to understand, right? And people love questions. When you lead with questions, that means that you want to know what they think, what they have to offer, and they get to contribute, which is a vitamin C for them. But it also gives you understanding and fuel and perspective so that when it's your turn to give, you give from a place of understanding, not just from a place of knowledge. The Bible's very clear that knowledge puffs up, right? Knowledge can be used as a weapon. I've seen it weaponized. I'm smarter than you, I'm wiser than you, shut up and listen to me, command and control, blah, 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 on and on it goes. But Jesus himself modeled what's called servant leadership. He asked his disciples questions, which of course he knew the answers. He asked the Pharisees questions, he knew the answers already. Oftentimes he would even answer questions with questions. And Jesus was very wise and gives us that example that even when we are asked for our opinion, and I heard this in a recent interview on Tom Bilyeu's podcast, Impact Theory, and he says what he has learned over time is that our tendency is to jump in with our advice and our conclusions and our answers and our solutions because we want to give, but we jump in too early. And we're really giving answers that make us feel better rather than what makes the person feel better or what's best for the situation. Why? Because we don't fully understand it, right? But if we seek first to understand and we ask and keep on asking, knock and keep on knocking, seek and keep on seeking to understand, well then when it really is our time to give, and you know that when you're invited to share, right? When it's your turn, because people really don't want to know what you have to share until they are ready, until they are open, until they are asking. And asking is an invitation. It's the key for you then to be able to share with someone what you've learned, what you have to give. And what you have to give may or may not be couched in an answer. It may be couched in a question, because ultimately, as leaders, as friends, we don't want to enable people, right? I look at the word love, L-O-V-E, and I'm realizing more and more every day that the E doesn't stand for enable. E is for encourage, empower, and equip. That my job in my connections and my relationships, what I have to give is the ability, the invitation, the joy of empowering, equipping, and encouraging others, not enabling them. Because when I enable them, then they become codependent on me. And that's really just stroking my ego. It's not really giving in the sense of giving unconditionally. So let me encourage you to take your vitamin C's seriously, right? These are better than the supplements that pass through your system. And in fact, they are essential for a life that is beautiful, meaningful, and purposeful. Your connections and your contributions. Seek not to get, but seek to give. And don't give to get, but feel that privilege that it's your honor, it's your mission, it's your calling. You get to give. Be a go-giver.